I cannot state enough how much I utterly despise the Alpha Legion. There's no one on YouTube who hates the Alpha Legion more than me. This is a lie. I actually quite enjoy the Alpha Legion now that I've read Shroud of Night. This book really fundamentally changed me from Alpharius's biggest hater to Omegon's biggest supporter. I really cannot state enough, though, how much I've actively started to enjoy the Alpha Legion as a whole, thanks to reading this book. What is up, everybody? Connor here, aka Angron's calmest son, aka Alpharius. That was a lie as well, or is it? But yes, as you know, I've been reading Shroud of Night, and Shroud of Night is very, very entertaining. It's definitely slowly moving up in the ranks to not my top 10, but definitely getting there, because it's a very good book. For starters, if you're unfamiliar with me, I put a video out there a while ago that kind of went over the fact that I'm not the biggest Alpha Legion fan, or at least I wasn't at the time. And that was one because obviously, like most Warhammer fans, I've never read a Warhammer book. Spoiler alert. I have actually. But, with that being said, a lot of my info from the Alpha Legion came from memes, came from people on Reddit, came from people on YouTube, and of course, there's a lot of bias going on there. There's a lot of interesting, shenanigans going back and forth on what's actually true and what's actually not. And in that instance, I think Alpharius would be pretty pleased on the current state of affairs for the lore getting mishmashed around and getting hot potatoed from YouTuber to YouTuber, Redditor to Redditor. But now that I read the book, or at least reading this book, I read Legion. I didn't like Legion at all. Shoot me for it. I really thought Legion was kind of shitty, if I'm being honest. But Shroud of Night is, I would say, the definitive Alpha Legion book. I would personally recommend if you want to get introduced to who the Alpha Legion are and how they operate. Yes, I understand there's Alpharius' Primarch book. Yes, I understand there's Hero Master. But spoiler alert, I don't know how to read. I have an IQ that's a little over 10, all right? I can only read one book at a time before I get sidetracked, okay? So we're talking about Shroud of Night. Very, very good book. I cannot highly recommend it any more than I can because, I lack the words, but I do recommend it highly. We're following Cassar and his Hero, his war band of other battle brothers who are obviously Alpha Legion, and they get kind of picked up on this world called Blood Axe that was in eternal war with various demon princes clashing together forever and ever. But then they get picked up by an Emperor's Children warband, and, their leaders basically, serve me, help me take over this world, and, you'll live. And Cassar's like, okay, whatever, that's how it's going to be. They go on to this other world, and who do they run into? Karn. Who else do they run into? Saint Celestine. Who else do they, run into? Anybody you can imagine. This is essentially if you were playing Dawn of War and you just clicked randomize for your opponents and then you just went to skirmish. This is, just a cluster of crazy, kooky characters, but it really works because the Alpha Legion thrives off insanity. They thrive off organized chaos, at least organized when they're put into the picture, right? Cassar, the leader, is only the leader in name. He understands his role and can dictate who goes where. But the beauty of the Alpha Legion that's shown in this book is they all understand their individual roles and they excel in their individual roles, but they can fill in a heartbeat. Remember, Alpha Legion, they're all indistinguishable from each other. And in one instance in this book, Cassar is asked to speak to the, warlord that's currently, in charge of everybody, including Cassar's Hero. And it's the Emperor, the Emperor's Children head honcho. And one of his boys clicks in the box and he's like, yo, should I fill in for you? He's like, not this time. It's just fun because you really get an in-depth look at the Alpha Legion, their tactics, how they operate, and how they view people. It's interesting, and it's not like overload. There's a lot of lore overload that can be found in some books. Like, here's a big ass one. This, the Founding Gaunt's Ghost Omnibus, not necessarily lore overload, but it's a hefty thing, and there's a lot going on in every other chapter. Sometimes it's easy to get lost in the sauce. In, Shroud of Night, you're not getting lost because the Alpha Legion kind of not baby you, but they hold your hand and walk you through the lore, how they're going about it, how they view people, and you get to see how they really do differ from every legion. And I know it's easy to say that when you read every legion's book and you say, of course they all differ, dude. Of course, yeah, they do, but you really would be surprised at the overlap and just general actions and behaviors that a lot of Space Marines are depicted in, regardless of whether they're loyalist or not. They're usually confined to set behaviors, and the Alpha Legion are no exception. However, they're given a lot more breathing room to interact with the setting as a whole, and it's very, prevalent, and it's very present in this book. Kassar talks to a cultist who's loaned to him by the Emperor's Children warband, and he's essentially asking Six. He's like, that's the cultist's name. He's like, yo, do you understand what we're doing? And the cultist is like, why are you talking to me? I'm a cultist. He's like, it's okay to ask questions. The Alpha Legion uses humans, and oftentimes they're, a pretty important set piece in our plans. And, you're not an idiot for asking questions, which is pretty funny because if you contrast that with the word bearers who look at their slaves and just want to just kill them, or even loyalists who kind of acknowledge that, serfs do their job and they are valued in the greater aspect of, the functionality of literally everything. They're still humans, and they're just kind of, it's like if you have a favorite ant and you're like, yo, that ant's really cool. But if it dies, you're not going to cry about it. You're just going to be like, oh, dude, that sucks. It's like if my hot glued orc were to just get broken right now. I'm going to cry about it because this actually took some effort, and I'm proud of it. But, sorry. Side note there. Coming back to what I was talking about, we get to see the different levels of approach in pragmatism and the mindset of an Alpha Legion, or in at least this warband in particular. Remember, every warband is difficult. It's really, really easy to generalize every legion, especially the Alpha Legion, because of memes, YouTube lore, and Reddit lore. Really easy to get a lot of misinformation, really easy to get a lot of bias, really easy to just hot potato shit, and then it goes all crazy right? Really easy. I think Alfarius would be pleasantly surprised at the state of all this different lore channels and Reddit excerpts getting posted and everything's getting lost in the sauce. I think he'd be pretty happy about that. But, that aside, seeing how they interact with human cultists and seeing how they interact with each other, how they all hold secrets from each other until it's relevant to the mission is interesting. It's intrigue done right. A lot of my criticisms for the Alpha Legion were there's a lot better ways to go around and just say, I did this, but actually I did this. And, plot twists are cool, but when everything's a twist, everything's kind of, not fun. It's kind of expected that this is a lie, but this is also a lie. I'm Angron's Comish the Sun, but I'm also Connor. You get what I'm saying? It's dumb. I was not a fan of that, and I'm not a fan of, that sort of depiction of how the stories with the Alpha Legion go. Shroud of Night took my critiques, grabbed them like a hammer, bashed me over the skull with it, and said, you're going to read, son, and read I did. It really did fix everything. There are secrets, there are espionage being sowed, but it's in a way that's digestible, easy. And when there are mysteries, it's not necessarily mysteries that lead to more mystery that just lead to a conundrum where you're like, this went nowhere. It's instead mysteries that are very surface level. Why didn't Kassar order his battle brother to engage when instead he told them to surrender, and they even threw their guns? You get what I'm saying? The mysteries are very surface level. Why did he do this? Why didn't he say this? It's just, easy. It's digestible. It allows you to think critically and think, I wonder why they do this or do that, and why they think this way. And it's not over the top, crazy shit, which there's a time and a place for that in Warhammer. I love the illogical nonsense that happens in Warhammer, but I also can appreciate when stuff is more sort of grounded and easier to just vibe with, right? Also, side note again, really interesting thing that a lot of people, I don't know if you know or don't know, the Alpha Legion have their own language. And what I mean by that is it's kind of funny because to normal people, it sounds like various things, like they're praising chaos gods or they're just shouting orders. But actually, they're having casual conversation. It's called Serpenta. So it's like essentially what I just described. Very coded language, very, layered language where nobody but an Alpha Legionnaire is going to understand what that Legionnaire is saying. So, blood for the blood god could actually mean, which way to the servitor, lounge so I can go play darts on one of the servitors? Is it to the right or to the left? It's that I found that really interesting as well because I haven't found that personally in any other Legion, and it's just a little bit of lore to nerd out on as well. And I just enjoyed it. What can I say? I like a little nerd shit here and there. I know I don't look like it, but I do enjoy some nerdy stuff. And Serpenta was one of was one of the nerdier stuff. And it's also nice because this kind of coincides with relatively recent Warhammer events with the opening of the Great Rift and the fall of Cadia. It's really good for whether you're interested in the Alpha Legion or just new in general to the lore. You want something that's more current, because I wouldn't worry about what's current in Warhammer, and I'm talking like timeline-wise or events, because it's really easy to just look it up and get connected. If you are going to go chronological in order, you're going to get a little confused. You're going to have to look up a guide. You're going to have to read everything in order, and if you're like me and you're relatively simple and easily satisfied with stuff, just chill out and pick what you like. It's a much better experience in my opinion. But that being said, Shroud of Night is really good, and my past criticisms of the Alpha Legion have henceforth been absolved. They're gone. I'm pleasantly happy with the Legion. I'm very happy with this book, and I would highly recommend it to anybody who either wants to get into the Alpha Legion, wants something more current, within the setting, or just wants a fun time, because it's a very messy book, but not in the sense of how it's written or the content. It's just messy in the sense that it's chaotic and literally everybody's fighting everybody, and it's just a great balance of fighting, espionage. It's always hard to find the balance of dialogue, violence, naval battles, on the boots battles, but this book really does a very, very good job of balancing everything you typically enjoy in your novels and just mashing it together. But that was Shroud of Night. Please go read it. Highly, highly recommend it. Alpha Legion are super cool. This is a lie. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon.